sa trabaho at gutom na sa maghabong pagtatrabaho pero wala kang pagkain sa bahay. Narito na ang sagot mga katropa, ang super manok lechon. Napapawi sa inyong gutom at siguradong mapapa-analyze ka dahil sa tender juicy na jumbo pa at siguradong malinis at bagong katay buhat sa farm. Kaya super na sa lasa at pangmasa pa. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga katropa? Takbo na sa Super Manok Panteño Siniluan at bumili na. Baka maubusan ka, katropa.
To continue, Mr. Clyde Teves, the person named in the search warrant, was not around during the implementation of the search.
Talakayin. Representative. Opinion. Palawakin. Aksyonan. Asam 00 dito na sa Yung Millennial Online TV.
Hanap mo ba ay Unwind Ventures? Tara nang mamangha sa mga tanawin. Ano man ang iyong travel goals? Dadalhin namin kayo. Sa Unwind Ventures at saya. Dito lang sa Wow Biyahe. Kaya wow, di ba?
Abangan dito lang sa Millennial Online TV. barangay, pangunahing unit ng pamahalaan lokal kung saan dito pinag-uusapan ang bawat sigalot ng mga residente ng bawat barangay. Dito rin pinag-uusapan ng mga piling halal na opisyal na barangay ang mga proyekto para sa kanilang barangay. Kumustahin natin ang panunungkulan ni Kapitan dito sa Dalo Barangay sa Millennial Online TV worldwide, ang katropa ng bawat barangay.
Ating tinatapos ang ating pagpupulong. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo at tapos na po ang ating session. Enjoy na po tayo.
Ikaw ba'y nag-iisa? Nalulungkot? Dahil iniwan at ipinagpalit? Ngayon ko, naging minamahal. Kung ngayon, i-type sa iyong mga cellphone, Facebook o YouTube man ang Millennial Online TV. Dahil nasa Millennial Online TV na ang online realista ng bagong milenyo, si Randall Villanos.
Sana'y di magmahil kung dati kung araw nang di pang bata sa piling ni nanay. Nais kong mauli ang awit ninang mahal. You are the one who makes me happy when everything else turns to gray. Walk on through the rain. Walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and walk on with hope in your heart.
At haharanahin kayo ni Randall ng iba't ibang awitin para maibsan ang inyong inip at kalungkutan kahit nasaan man kayo.
Hanggang sa tumanda. Come on. Kung matanda na, sana'y di tayo magbago.
At pwede rin kayong makiduit kay Randall tuwing Huwebes ng hapon. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga kamilenyo? Tawag na!
Araw-araw ikaw ang gusto kong kasama.
Ayun, no? Oras sa udyat, alas 5:15. Ay, hindi, 14 lang. Masyadong mabilis ang oras, ano? Alas 5:14 ng hapon, Philippine Standard Time. At syempre, oras po sa Millennial Online TV. Welcome aboard! Ayun, welcome. Welcome po sa Thursday edition ng programang T.R.O.P.A. At syempre, ako pa rin ang inyong magiging kasama. Wala nang iba. No other than the one and only. Sabi nga pero alam mo sa tao minsan merong magagalit, merong matutuwa, merong naiinis, merong hindi, no? Merong may napapangitan, may nagugwapuhan. Talagang gano'n ang buhay. Gano'n ang tao Hindi katulad sa ibang bansa, walang pakialaman, pangit ka, maganda ka, bahala ka sa buhay mo. Di ba mga katropa? Anyway, magandang hapon mga katropa. Ako po yung lingkod, ROCEL LOPEZ. Buti na lang ang aking parang bayan na Jogrades. Yan, stay put lang, ha? Doors move lang siya. Stay, here we are, ha? Here we are, yun. Tama ba? Tama ba English ko, pare? Ika nga, stay where you are, doors move. Yung, si paring bayan Jogrades, sigurado tayo nasa dagupan. Na kay Mayor Lim. Tama ba? Lim ba yung pangalan ng mayor dyan, pare? Ayan, nandun po siya sa pong sales specialist. Tama ba? At magandang hapon din kay Sister Merly Orhenes ng Fresh Option Meat Shop. Ito po ay waswheat ni Roland Soriano ba? Sis Merly. At siyempre, sabi niya, gandang hapon sa ROCEL. O, kamusta na ba yung asawa? Uy, sabi ni Miss Jackie Lagpaw Adahar, magandang hapon daw kahit po maulan. Nasaan kaya to si Miss Jackie Adahar? Maulan eh. Nasaan kaya ito? Okay, so mga kaibigan, magulang hapon sa ating lahat at siyempre welcome sa programang Talakayin, Rebisahin, Opinyon Palawakin, Aksyonan, Tropa. At siyempre binabati rin natin ang pamilya Lanawan, no? Diyan po sa may Kawayan, Bulacan. Ayan, siyempre kinakailangan batiin natin yun, baka mamaya may magalit, no? Kaya babatiin natin siyempre, si Kajelin Lanawan at siyempre ang kanyang esposo na si Kajimi Lanawan. Ayan. Ayan, at sino pa ba? Sino pa ba ang ating mga double cuts na hindi pa nababate? At parang nanonood yata si Marcy Fernando ng JNT. Yung JNT po, yung pong mga pag may magpapadala sa inyo, nag-order kayo online, ayan po. Ang magdi-deliver ay ang JNT. At siyempre po, nako mga kaibigan, sino pa ba? Sino pa ba ang ating dapat na batiin ng ating mga katropa? Uy, teka, ayun, ayan. Si Miss Jackie Adahar, ayan, nanonood kasi medyo, teka lang ha. Meron tayong hinahanap kasi, itong si Marcy, hindi kasi siya nakasin. Nagtatanong siya doon sa, kuya raw, sabi niya gano'n, kuya. O, ayan na, sinend ko na sa'yo. Naka-live na ako eh. Kaya medyo hindi kita masagot, no, Marcy Fernando. Ito po si Marcy, simpatiko po ito. Ito po ay isang officer ng JNT International. Kita nyo naman, big time. Basta Marcy, yung sinabi ko sa'yo, totoo yun, doon ko nagbibiro. Baka ikaw nagbibiro ka. Okay, so mga kaibigan, alas 5:19 na ng hapon. At siguro ay naku, maulan ba't kaya? Kaso hindi natin nakausap ang Pag-asa. Hindi natin na-advise na mag-report sila. Kaya wala tayong Pag-asa. Siguro baka bukas na lang. Pero ngayon nakita nyo naman, kaya nga lagi kong sinasabi sa ating programa, lahat ng mga nanonood, kinakailangan magdala ho tayo lagi ng panangga sa ulan, hindi man maulan, siyempre sa init ng araw, no? Sa mga riders naman, siyempre doon sa inyong box, kailangan maglagay kayo doon ng payong, ng jacket, ng kung ano pa man, kung ano pwede nyo dalhin. Pwede rin kayo magdala ng makeup kit. Siyempre, pagkababa mo ng motor, harap ka, halimbawa, meron kang pupunta, magre-retouch ka, di ba? Dalagay ka ng polvo, kaya apog. Pwede na yun sa mga riders natin. Kaysa naman naharap ka doon ng itsura mo, mukha kang basang sisiw, mukha kang gusgusin, di ba? So, magdala ka ng polvo, o kaya yung, tawag doon, yung blush on, no? O kaya yung face powder, ayan. Para naman bago kayo humarap sa inyong kakausapin, presentable. Hindi yung mukha kang nakipagsabo dito sa 7 demonyo. Kaya ako, nung nagmumotor, yung box ko, nakita nyo gano'n, panuho yun. Kompleto yun. May makeup kit. May sanitizer, may alcohol. merong, siyempre, pagkain, hindi mawawala ron. Siyempre, importante yun eh. Nako, alas 5:20 na. Ma'am Merly, umuulan ba dyan sa Zambales? At Parimbayan, dyan sa Dagupan, umuulan bumba o umuulan? Siguro mga kaibigan, at itutungay natin sa inyo para naman medyo maiba-iba. Yung pong ginawang Pandesal Forum, no? Pinag-uusapan dito, kung di ako nagkakamali, tungkol doon sa China. Ewan natin kung ano. Siyempre, pinangunahin po ito ng ating T.R.O.P.A na si Wilson Lee Flores, isang award-winning columnist, no? Na si Sir Wilson Flores. Siya po ang moderator dito po sa ginawang Pandesal Forum. Panoorin natin mamaya, mga kaibigan, para at mapakinggan natin kung ano ba ang kanilang mga pinagtalunan dito sa forum na ito. Hindi pinagtalunan, pinag-usapan lang. Iba yung pinagtalunan kasi dati yung dati nating page na Millennial Online TV, by disabled ho ni Meta. Dahil that time meron ho tayong inilabas dito rin ho sa Pandesal Forum na about ho sa New People's Army. Nagkataon po, yung pong isang party list representative, nahandon guest, sumugod ho, yung congressman, yung USEC ng National Youth Commission, NYC, no? Si USEC Kadima ba? O yun, basta yun. So, doon po sa video, kitang-kita po na live kasi nagbabangayan sila. So, yun po, nilabas po natin yun. After that, ayun na, disabled na tayo. Talagang ganun. Malamang ko yan, either yung mga makakaliwa, inutusan nung kung sino man na i-disabled ako, i-report, kaya nagkaganon po. At magandang hapon din, sabi ni Ma'am Merly Orejenes, Sir, pagrit naman po, only son niya, ng advance happy birthday sa June 25. Ayun, advance happy birthday na anak ni Sister Merly, si John Carlo Orejenes. Abay, happy birthday, John Carlo. JC na lang for short. Masyadong mahaba, John Carlo eh. JC Orejenes, happy birthday sa iyo sa June 25. Baka naman. Bekenemen, pwede ka magpadala sa studio kung ano handa mo. Kahit isgapete lang yan. At sabi pa ni Ma'am Merly Orejenes, nag-uumpisa pa lang po ang ulan dito ngayon. Ayun. Siyempre po, ngayon po, pang parting norte, talaga pong madalas ulanin yan. At ayun, happy birthday ulit sa iyo, John Carlo Orejenes. Ang pagbati buhat sa iyong Mama Mia. Mama Mia na si Mama Merly Orejenes. Ito po'y kapatid Ito po'y kapatid sa pananampalataya. Ang kanya pong esposo, ito si Soriano, Roland ba? Rolly. Yan. Okay, sa mga kaibigan, wag na nating patagalin at medyo baka lumakas pa ang ulan. Panoorin natin yung ginawang Pandesal Forum na pinangunahan po naging moderator ay walang iba kundi si Sir Wilson Lee Flores. Panoorin po natin.
Two of the best intellectuals and international politics, geopolitics analysts, not only in the Philippines, but I believe among the best in Southeast Asia. I will introduce them in detail later on, just before their opening remarks. But I will mention their names now. Si Professor Bobby Tuason and Professor Ana Malindog-Uy. Our topic today is very interesting, not very common, and hindi siya nasa headline natin in the Philippines, but in the headlines worldwide, and had very big impact on the future of the Philippines and Asia. Our topic today, the path to peace. Chinese diplomacy in Ukraine, Saudi Arabia and Iran. What is the impact on the Philippines and Asia? Ibig sabihin yun, peace efforts and diplomacy efforts of China in the Ukraine war with Russia and with the very historic reconciliation between the world's two biggest oil exporters, Saudi Arabia and Iran. I will introduce first to speak for his opening remarks. I'd like to introduce University of the Philippines UP Professor Bobby M. Tuason. He is Director for Policy Studies and in-house policy analyst of the progressive and nationalist think tank called CENPEG, Center for People Empowerment in Governance, CENPEG. He is also an multi-award winning professor, research na yan, at UP, former department chairman of the political science department also, and Professor Tuason is editor and co-author of 15 books on geopolitics and politics and other important issues. Let us welcome Professor Bobby Tuason for his opening statement about the topics this morning. Welcome, Professor Tuason.
Maraming salamat, tinig po ako. Maraming salamat, Wilson. Good morning, everyone. As our host said a moment ago, this topic is very relevant. Considering that the Russian war on Ukraine has reached about more than 1.5 years, or almost 1.5 years today. Russia launched what it described as SMOs, or Special Military Operations on Ukraine, in February of 2022. In order to check the mounting and increasing expansion of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization founded back in 1949, to contain and encircle Russia. And as far as Russia is concerned, Ukraine is the red line. If you cross the red line, it will have a direct threat on Russian security. The number one priority of Russia then and now is its security, having been invaded historically several times before. But 1 month after the SMO was launched by Russia, the two sides, Ukraine and Russia, agreed to convene for peace talks in March of 2022. They were about, and this was mediated by Turkey under President Erdogan, which is pronounced as Erdogan in Turkey. They were about to reach a peace agreement when Ukraine was prevailed upon by the US and UK to withdraw. The underlying goal of the US actually in this war is regime change in Russia. They don't want Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, to stay forever as president, considering that, under him, Russia has become not only an economic power, but also a military power. So that was the underlying ultimate goal as far as the US is concerned. So because of that, the war continued in April, and it is still ongoing today. In the meantime, with Russia being more powerful than Ukraine, of course, militarily, Russia was able to capture during the first few months the northern region of Ukraine, Donbas and Donetsk, which are both populated by Russians. Having achieved that, the region proclaimed itself as autonomous republic and wanted to join or rejoin the Federation of Russia. After that victory, Russia went on waging months-long battles on Bakhmut with the so-called Wagner army under the Russian Federation. Some say the Wagner army is composed of mercenaries and ex-convicts. I don't know how true that is, but that their role was supported by the Russian army. They succeeded. I think early this year they succeeded in occupying a large part of Bakhmut, and from there on, the Russian army marched forward to other regions. To the extent that by now, Russia has been acknowledged as the military victor in Ukraine, having occupied almost 70 to 80% of the Ukrainian territory. Now, the reason why, Ukraine under Zelensky, President Zelensky, keeps on waging war on Russia is because, firstly, Ukraine was promised military aid by the US and other NATO countries. The latest pledge given to Ukraine is to deliver hundreds of F-16s, the third generation F-16. The latest model is the fourth generation. So they are giving Ukraine these hundreds of fighter jets F-16 to encourage and give incentive to Ukraine to keep on waging war. And now, because of that, Ukraine is supposed to be preparing counteroffensive. It has not yet mounted this counteroffensive. But overall, Russia is winning, and it continues to be brutal, with thousands of Ukrainian soldiers already killed, a few thousands of Russian soldiers already killed, and the displacement of several millions of Ukrainian nationals. Many of them crossing the border toward Poland and other neighboring European countries. So that's the reason why the war keeps on raging. In the meantime, there is China. In February of this year, Xi Jinping was able to talk to Vladimir Putin in Moscow, who agreed to China's peace plan. Not a proposal, but a peace plan. Zelensky, who was also talked to Xi Jinping, also agreed to the Chinese peace plan. That's why China already directed an emissary, an envoy, to prepare the ground for possible peace talks between the two countries. China's peace plan is composed of 12 points. I will name only the highlights. The first point, respect sovereignty of all countries. Number 2, the second point, abandon Cold War mentality, meaning to say the military approach of relating with other countries. Number 3, immediate ceasefire or end hostilities. Number 4, resume peace talks. Because, as I said earlier, the first peace talks were held in February of 2020, or rather March of 2022. And then stop unilateral sanctions, especially on Russia, that had been imposed by EU to cripple its economy, but it failed. And instead of crippling the Russian economy was put on it keep on growing by leaps and bounds. Its natural gas and other energy resources are now being exported in large amounts to China, India, and other friendly or countries friendly to Russia. So these sanctions have been to the consternation, of course, of the US. Now, on the other hand, Zelensky has posed a precondition for the resumption of peace talks. Number one, he wants all Russian forces to withdraw from Ukraine. He wants Russia to abandon the occupation of territories that it has captured since the beginning of the war. So that is definitely a very difficult precondition as far as Russia is concerned. Why? If you have already captured territories in a legitimate war, why would you abandon that and place yourself in a defensive position when peace talks begin? But China is not the only one calling for peace talks and calling for mediation, conflict resolution. The other countries, major countries, that have also advocated for the same call. The same call include Pope Francis himself and the Vatican City, which is considered a city-state, like Singapore. And then there is India, Brazil, South Africa, Egypt, Congo, Uganda, and other countries. So that now, friends, is the state of things in Ukraine. But I'd like to add that the underlying interest of Russia is to secure its border, to secure its territorial integrity and security. And they have historical basis on that. For centuries, Russia, Russia, which is a major country in Europe, has been attacked by such countries as France under Napoleon Bonaparte. It has been attacked also by the formerly Prussian army, now the German army. And then during World War II, it was invaded by the Nazi Germany, but their advance into the Soviet Union was neutralized at the Battle of Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad was very costly in terms of lives, losses. Millions of Russians died because of that until Germany retreated. And this is less known in history. It is because of the Soviet victory against Germany that Germany retreated and was contributed by large measure to the eventual defeat of Germany. So not for the Soviet resistance, we will not be able to measure the number of years that the World War II will still go on. So that, in short, is my way of giving the media a way of understanding the Russian situation and understanding the role of Ukraine as the line that goes into the heart of Russia, the NATO expansion through Ukraine, because NATO wanted Ukraine to join NATO, despite the 2014 Minsk agreement that provided for the neutrality of Ukraine, is stop the NATO expansion and so on and so forth. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Professor Bobby Tuason, for opening statement. Later on, please prepare our questions for Professor Tuason. Thank you. Next, for opening statement about the topics today, we would like to invite Professor Ana Malindogoy, Vice President of the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies think tank, UP Political Science, a graduate cum laude, now finishing her doctorate degree, a top foreign policy analyst and columnist. Let us welcome Ana Malindog Uy.
Hello. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, Professor Bobby, and thank you so much for setting the tone of this media forum, of Pandesal Forum. And our title for today's forum is "The Path to Peace: Chinese Diplomacy in Ukraine, Saudi and Iran, and Impact on Philippines and China." In my case, as a quick opening remarks, I think when you talk about the Chinese diplomacy, especially when you talk about defense, security, in not only in Asia but across the world, at this time, the peace diplomacy or security diplomacy of the Chinese of the PRC, or the People's Republic of China, is quite embodied in in the so-called global security initiative, or what you call the GSI. Again, it's the Global Security Initiative. This is proposed by President Xi Jinping during I think that was April 21, 2022, in the BOA Forum. The BOA Forum is an Asia annual conference that is attended by many head of states and also professionals, and I think enthusiasts on defense and security, or experts. Yeah, in Hainan, in China. It's a yearly thing. So the GSI was proposed during that time. What is the GSI? Because we need to understand this precisely because that's where they draw what you call their peace and security diplomacy, as far as China is concerned. The Global Security Initiative is an alternative security framework and approach toward conflict resolution and peace promotion across the globe that to a greater extent is an alternative to the way the Western, led by the United States, does its what you call peace promotion, or what you call security and diplomacy. So this is like an alternative that they're proposing. And to a greater extent, it challenges the Western-led defense and peace promotion across the globe. So this is what we call the GSI is actually the Global Security Governance Framework that China is proposing to countries, especially in the developing world, or what we call the Global South, for conflict resolution and peace promotion, which most often than not, in the context of the United States, they operate their peace promotion more in a unilateral way. But the GSI is not based on unilateralism. It's more based on international laws, recognized international laws, and I think it's based on multilateralism. So the Global Security Initiative is significant precisely because it is a pragmatic and realistic approach to maintaining peace and security in the Asian region and across the globe. It prescribes a sense of pragmatism needed and necessary principle which peace, security, and development could be achieved and secured in a wider Asian region and beyond. It provides a new approach how to address the root causes of global conflicts, both intrastate and interstate conflicts, and solving security challenges facing humanity through multilateralism and interstate cooperation in a more holistic and realistic manner without compromising the territorial integrity and sovereignty of countries. So what are the basic principles of the Global Security Initiative? First is, as what Professor Bobby have said earlier, maintaining common, comprehensive, and cooperative and sustainable security. Second, very, very important for any country for that matter across the globe, respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. Third is respecting the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. And four is peacefully resolving differences and disputes between countries. And the last one, which is also very important, maintaining security in traditional and non-security issues and upholding the indivisibility of security. Because what is happening in Ukraine is not only an issue of, many Western media said like it's an invasion of Russia over Ukraine and all of these things. There are history to that. And I think one of the basic contention of Russia, why they have this military operation in Ukraine, is precisely because of their security is being threatened by the NATO, which is led by the United States, no? Because they don't want Ukraine, because Ukraine is a buffer state, actually. So they don't want Ukraine to be part of NATO alliance. And NATO alliance is a military alliance. Because the moment it happens, the security also, the fundamental security of Russia will be threatened. Because we know that Russia and the United States are not the best of friends. So if you really look at this and you look at the GSI being proposed by China, it's very realistic and pragmatic because it addresses this kind of concerns. So, because one of the fundamental principles is respect for the sovereignty of one country. So if you respect that, you don't intervene in the internal affairs of one country too. And you respect, the security concern of one country too. So that is I think the essence of what you call Chinese diplomacy when you talk about peace promotion and security promotion across the globe, but more primarily in Asia, because China is in Asia. So these are being advocated, and I think this is where they draw their peace diplomacy even in Iran, in the Middle East, because they are now brokering peace among countries in the Middle East that has problems. And you can see that there's development to that. Because like, for example, Iran, Saudi Arabia are talking, and they're actually embracing Iran again as part of that, Middle Eastern countries, a family, and they're talking. So that's very important if you talk about peace and security across the globe, Because, the Middle East is also a very volatile section of the world, na ang daming nangyayaring gulo dyan. Pero right now, it's a little bit stable when you talk about conflict. There are pockets of conflict, but not like, leading to a World War III. So, and I hope also in our region that will be the same. Our region will be more stable and will not have threat of a second and third World War. And I hope so. So these are basically the idea, and I think this is the framework where the Chinese diplomacy is coming from when we talk about peace and security promotion across the globe, which you can see right now in operation with the Iran and Saudi Arabia talks brokered by the Chinese diplomats. And on the other hand, if you look at the peace pact being offered by China to settle the conflict between Russia and Iran, you can see that the GSI principles are very much embedded in that pact and that kind of proposal from China. And also, if you look at how Russia thinks that they can be secured as a country, you can also see it very much evident in the GSI principles. So this is I think, the most important aspect if we want to understand Chinese diplomacy when you talk about peace promotion and diplomacy in the world, not only in Asia but in the world. So that is what I can share as of the moment. Later, I will try to answer questions as much as I can and to the best of my abilities and to the best of my knowledge about geopolitical issues and international relation issues. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and a pleasant morning to everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindag-Uy and Professor Bobby Tuason for your very interesting overview of the peace initiatives of China in the Middle East, in Ukraine area, and possible impact on Asia, particularly us here in the Philippines. We have first question from Mr. Dick of Net25. Pwede pag-state your full name again for the benefit of our two panelists.
Good morning, Professor Tuason and Professor Uy. I'm Dixon Intaco from Net25. I would like to ask your analysis with regard to the GSI, or the Global Security Initiative, proposed by the Chinese President Xi Jinping during the BOA Forum. Now, according to you, it is different with the Western approach that is unilateral. The GSI of China is more on multilateral, or let's say more on a diplomatic way. So how the Western power reacting on this GSI as proposed by the Chinese president? Yes.
Okay, that's a very good question coming from you, sir. Because if you look at the Ukraine conflict before, no, like I think a year ago, the United States would say, China has a role to play in brokering peace between Russia and Ukraine. They're always saying that because they think that, I mean, the Western world, or the Western countries, especially the one allies of the United States, would always say that China has an influence in Russia because the strategic partnership of Russia and China is very evident. And you can see that they're friends in terms of relationship, bilateral relationship, they're good. They have a good relationship. So the United States would always say that China has a role to play in settling the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Now, China came up with a proposal, a pact, how this can be settled. And then again, and that pact, if you really read the document and the proposal of China, how to settle the Ukraine crisis and to have peace in that region, in the Eurasia, no? And then to de-escalate conflict in terms of military. China came up with a proposal. And actually, it was presented to both sides. And of course, the United States and its allies, the Western allies, know that, no? However, the United States rejected the proposal of China. You know, this is how ambivalent the United States and the Western allies. Before they say, okay, China should influence and broker the peace between the two conflicting countries. Now China came up with a proposal of brokering peace between the two countries, Russia and Ukraine. And I think that is based on what we call the Global Security Initiative. But now the United States is rejecting it. So I don't understand. If you really want peace, then you should consider all proposals possible that would mitigate peace and security in that region. But why in the hell the United States is trying to disregard the proposal of China? Why don't look at it and consider it first? And probably look if this is the possible way to settle the conflict. Because that conflict in Ukraine is affecting the world. Not necessarily only militarily speaking, but economically speaking. And we don't want that conflict to escalate into a third world war. Precisely because Russia is not a superpower, probably economically speaking, but superpower in terms of military might. It has nuclear capability. And I don't think Putin is bluffing when he said that he will secure and he will act if necessary to protect his country. So that is my take. And that is, I think, how the United States and I think the Western allies is reacting to that kind of way of resolving conflict. So they are like ambivalent, no? They have this kind of strategic ambiguity. They will say, you do it, but if there's already a proposal, no, we don't want it.
So meaning to say, Professor, the United States approach is more on provocative
Yes.
Issue. Now let's bring the issue
In the Philippines.
in the Philippines and China, including Taiwan,
Yes.
because United States is acting more provocative now, but the views of the Chinese government is different with the United States. So how to de-escalate the tension in South China Sea, even in Taiwan Strait?
Okay, my opinion in this now, coming from a very political and geopolitical perspective. First and foremost, when we talk about our country, the Philippines, I understand that we're in a very strategic geopolitical location. And because of that, major powers in Asia and even the United States has so much, they have interest on us because of that situation. Now, I understand that we have good relation with the United States as an ally because we are a military ally of the United States because of the NDP.
Yes.
On the other hand, China is our economic partner, okay? And it's a very difficult diplomatic navigation that the current administration has to deal with. especially the president. You have to make a balance of everything, no? You cannot just say na you don't want the United States anymore and you don't want China. You need to strike a balance between these two superpowers. But we need also to be very careful when you look at issues geopolitically speaking, because Taiwan Strait issue is an internal affair issue of China. It is an internal affair of China. If it's an internal affair in geopolitics and international relations, basic notion and basic principle, you don't interfere in the internal affairs or domestic affairs of another country. So that's the principle of non-interference. So yeah, there is also one China policy that we adhere to, and that's part of the basic foundation of our bilateral relation with China. So in that case, when you talk about the Taiwan Strait, the best way forward for the Philippines is not to interfere, and we avoid being used by any power or any country at all to interfere in that Taiwan Strait concern or question, because that is an internal affair of China. On the other hand, when you talk about the South China Sea, the South China Sea should not be viewed just between the Philippines and China, because there are other claimant states in the South China Sea. You have Vietnam in there, which is very, very aggressive as well. So you have to look at it in a more broader sense, no? Like, there are many players in there. And you have also third countries who are actually interfering in the issue. And one of that is the United States. So the Philippines has to navigate that issue carefully, but at the end of the day, resolving the dispute in the South China Sea should be peaceful and negotiations, diplomatic. We don't go beyond that. Because military and defense, we will be at a very disadvantaged position. China is a superpower in every possible sense in Asia, even militarily speaking. So we don't go beyond, we don't go to that level that, we're like, oh, the United States and our ally, they will come to our rescue and blah, 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 and then we engage them in that level. No, because at the end of the day, our country will be compromised. So the best way forward is to push for the conclusion of the code of conduct of in the South China Sea that is being discussed right now in the ASEAN level with China. At the same time, be patient, be pragmatic in the approach of negotiation diplomatically and peacefully with not only with China but all concerned countries that has claims. They have claim in the South China Sea. That's the way forward. We cannot be like have this bravado like we have the United States and we think we can already fight China militarily. No, that is really not the best way forward.
So, Professor, what do you think with the result of the recent state visit or working visit of President Bongbong Marcos in the United States, that there is an agreement, security agreement between the United States and the Philippines with regards to the issue in the South China Sea? So it will aggravate the situation or our relationship with China?
Yes, it did already. That's why if you look at how the spokesperson spoke about the issue, about the specific issue, they're kind of not so happy. And they expressed their, not so happy statement against the Philippines and China, against the Philippines and the United States. But again, even if that is the statement of the spokesperson of China as a country, still negotiation is open because China is open to negotiation and the South China Sea is negotiable. Taiwan Strait issue is non-negotiable for China. The South China Sea is negotiable. What does it mean? It means we need to talk, engage, and be patient and be pragmatic in our approach in resolving the dispute in the South China Sea as a country. And as much as possible, we don't involve third parties. That is not even a party to the conflict. Because if you involve third parties like the United States, things get muddled and things get complicated. Because the United States, they have their own interest in the region that is not even our interest as a country. So that is the thing that we have to be very careful. And we need to be wise in how we address this issue. So that is my case. And let me
Yes.
give the floor to Professor Bobby.
And another, Professor Bobby, before you answer my question, how do you view the statement of Chinese Defense Minister Li Xiangfu in the recent Asia Top Security Summit in Singapore?
Yes, the
And he
Shangri-La.
stated that conflict with the U.S. would be an unbearable disaster.
Yes, of course, because
Okay.
yes, sir. Sige,
Answer
sir.
that. But before I go to your point, may I just interject that Vladimir Putin also said that if NATO increases the volume of its attack on Russia, Putin said that Russia will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons as its ultimate defense. Otherwise, Russia will be wiped out from the European map. So that is, I think, a very clear message against the threat. And I should say that the US and NATO countries should listen to that counterpoint of Putin. Now going to the GSI, I'd like to not examine the message, which is the Global Security Initiative, but also the messenger. Who is the messenger here? The messenger is China. And China, despite its 6 centuries of existence as documented, 6,000 years of recorded history of China, has had no history of war, let alone a history of colonialism. In fact, it was China that became the victim of the so-called century of humiliation. When China was subjected to extraterritorial invasions, presence of European powers, including Japan, from the 1940s up to 1949, when China was able to gain its independence. No? Now, since 1949 up until today, I stand for the fact that China has consistently followed its 5 points of principles of foreign policy, which include peaceful coexistence, mutual interest, mutual benefit, non-interference in the internal affairs of all independent countries. And it has followed this. That's why Professor Anna said that Taiwan is an internal affairs issue. And China is reminding the US that the US adheres likewise to the One China principle. So why use Taiwan to overthrow China and instigate a possible war between the US and China over the Taiwan issue? So that's one point. Now, there is another point that I wanted to interject also. US means war, and the ruling deep state in the US is not White House. White House is just a stooge of the so-called military-industrial congressional complex that allows arms manufacturers like Lockheed Martin and other arms manufacturing companies to encourage armed conflicts and wars, tensions like in the South China Sea and again for Ukraine. During the Ukraine war, since February 22, the biggest profiteer of that war has been the military-industrial congressional complex because they export war equipment, ammunition, bombs, missiles, jet fighters, and so on. Sino makikinapang dyan? Hindi ang Ukraine. Kasi ginagamit lang ang Ukraine nitong mga military-industrial congressional complex to profit from the war. So that is one thing that I hope deserves a deeper understanding with regard to the role of the military-industrial complex. the statement of the Chinese defense minister, which is also consistent with the statement of Foreign Minister Qin Gang. Qin Gang. Yeah, not Gang, but Qin Gang in Chinese. Qin Gang says that in fact the U.S. is already preparing a strategic war on China, and that will possibly explode by 2030. China is considered by the U.S. as the long-term existential threat to U.S. global hegemony. And the only way by which the global hegemony of the U.S. will be sustained is to overthrow China, even if it means initiating war on China. They are prepared to do that. Of course, Xi Jinping says, if you make war, we are prepared for that. We are prepared for any eventuality. And ironically, in previous game theory scenarios initiated by the RAND Corporation, I think even by the Johns Hopkins University, it was found out that in a war between the US and China, China will win. China will win. Why? Because China derives its military power from its economic power. Any country that has superior economic power will always have a superior military capability. So they should watch out. Hindi siya dapat padalos-dalos sa kanyang mga pananakot, no? Kasi hindi naman siya talaga mananalo.
Sir, one last point on my part. What do you think? Is China following the GSI, especially doon sa respect territorial integrity and sovereignty of every country? Because I brought this issue doon sa issue natin with regards to the disputed territories in the South China Sea. That's why US is trying to increase the presence in our country in order to prevent any more yung ginagawa nilang pananakop sa mga pinagtatalo ng territory in the South China Sea. So do you think the China is practicing one of the GSI, which is respect territorial integrity and sovereignty of every country?
Okay, let me first reply to that question. No? But before I address that question, I think I will try to address your question earlier that if in any case there would be a US-China war, it's not good for the whole world. Not. Why? Both are capable military powers. Though China is not yet at par, China doesn't have that parity yet, military strength-wise, with the United States. But China is really developing and improving. And in a matter of time, it will have parity with the United States. Now, look, if both of them has that kind of military might, do you think the world will survive a nuclear war? Of course, we don't want that, no? Yes, never, ever, please don't. We pray that it will never happen. So that's why peace advocates, no, like myself and Professor Bobby, who understand this thing a bit, no? We're trying to educate the public. Now, this is not a joke. It will cost the whole world, no? And the world will really be in chaos. And we don't want that. So we want to educate the public. And of course, we want to, in a greater way, voice our concern to, like, for example, in the Philippines, to our government that, this is not just an issue of the Philippines. It's an issue of the world. And we need to be concerned of the world, not just of the Philippines. So that's why we're doing this. Now we're trying to advocate and educate the public. On the other hand, on the issue of what you're saying, like the South China Sea dispute, and on issue of sovereignty, look, in the GSI, it's very clear. Respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries. Sovereignty and territorial integrity are very connected. And there is such a thing, when you look at the United Nations UNCLOS, the definition of territorial waters, if you speak about territorial waters, it means the country has sovereignty over it. beyond it, beyond the territorial waters as prescribed by UNCLOS, you don't have sovereignty over it anymore. Okay? Now, in the South China Sea, what we claim, we don't have sovereignty. We only have sovereign rights. Sovereign rights and sovereignty are not the same. Okay? That is our claim. We claim sovereign rights on economic zone. We have sovereign rights, we don't have sovereignty because it's not within our territorial waters. On the other hand, the Chinese claim is different from our claim because what they claim is they have territory over these areas that they claim in the South China Sea. Not necessarily Nanda's line. Actually, it was not even used during the arbitral. No, it's not even. It is a historical claim of China. Okay, so if you look at the claims between different countries in the South China Sea, claiming the South China Sea, some of the islands, no, they have different claims. Some of them are maritime, some of them is exclusive economic zone, like sovereign rights, and some of them is territorial. The UNCLOS is not competent to settle sovereignty issues or territorial claims. It can only say, like, you know, you have territorial waters here, this is your sovereignty, sovereign rights, economic zone, but not sovereignty issues. So what we have is claim only. Settlement of the issue is not yet there. So that's why it is subject to negotiation. And when you negotiate, when you talk about sovereignty issue, it's a bilateral negotiation actually. Because there is no mechanism yet in the world, even international law, that can really solve all of these issues unless you submit it to what you call international. There's a court in international level that can settle this. International ICJ, International Court of the United Nations, but Justice, ICJ, International Court of Justice. But you can only do that if there's an agreement on the other party. Hindi pwedeng ikaw lang. It would always be both sides. They agree to submit and to adjudicate this in the International Criminal Court of Justice internationally. So hindi pwede na ikaw lang. It's just always two sides na mag-agree. So hindi pwedeng sabihin na our sovereignty in the South China Sea is being encroached by China. Because in the very first place, our claim is sovereign rights, not sovereignty. It's economic zone. We don't have sovereignty in sovereign rights area. Okay? So we need to be very clear about these things because these are technicalities that we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Let me just add that, in fact, the two countries, China and the Philippines, were already talking. They were already holding bilateral negotiations on the conflicting maritime disputes with both countries. It all happened during the time of Noynoy Aquino. Both sides were talking how to resolve peacefully the maritime disputes, and it was progressing until the U.S. cajoled the pro-U.S. Noynoy government to raise the case already for arbitration at The Hague, citing provisions of the UNCLOS or the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas. So when that happened, when Noynoy government, through Solicitor General Wilpay then, raised the case, China was shocked. Why would the Philippines do that when both sides were still talking? So at this point, there was already a third-party interference on the part of the U.S. China refused. China was not part of the jurisdiction and therefore cannot be mandated or compelled to, under international law, to accede to the judgment if it was never part of the proceedings. That's under international law. The international law says that there should be two parties. If there's only one party, then I don't know what law the arbitrary tribunal use in order to pass on a judgment, making China now looking like defensive on that point. Uh, in any case, during the time of President Duterte in 2017, both sides reopened the bilateral dialogue mechanism to negotiate. And at the time, I think it was during the time of the Philippine ambassador to China, Chief Romano, who is a good friend, when they started these negotiations. As far as I know, the mechanism has gone as far as 7 dialogues already. The Marcos government now should be transparent enough what has happened to that dialogue mechanism. But as far as I understand the Chinese, they are always open to dialogue. Let us settle all problems to peaceful dialogue on the condition that there should be no third country or third party meddling in the dialogue. Otherwise, it will make the issue more confused and unresolvable at all.
Thank you. May tanong dito, may question.
Good morning,
Mag-state name niya.
Alvin Talabello from EuroTV Philippines. Gusto ko lang po makuha yung emphasis kanina sa questions ni Kuya Vic from the both of you. Where should the Philippines put himself? Are we in the right position right now? And how do you read the independent foreign policy of Marcos administration?
Yes. Yes. And maybe any advice?
Are we in the right position, ma'am? Ms.
Yes.
Lucia?
Very good question.
From my own perspective, since September last year, Bongbong Marcos, this is factual, had already positioned itself on the side of the U.S. I call it Bongbong Marcos's pivot to the U.S. against Duterte's China-leaning foreign policy. And that the evidence of that, the proof for that, is the increase of territories under EDCA, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement signed by Norway back in 2014, increasing the 5 EDCAs to 9. They added 4 more EDCAs. And the 4 EDCAs are in Northern Luzon, in Cagayan, although the Cagayan governor opposed that. They will not support the EDCA there, and other territories in Northern Luzon, approximately nearer Taiwan. However, I also appreciate the fact that Bongbong Marcos has set a condition that no military equipment will be sent to the EDCAs if these are intended to make war against China over the Taiwan issue. I think that's fair enough. And the US are fairly advised not to do that. Because the EDCA can always be abrogated by any of the parties. In fact, the US, when it signed an agreement, never ratified through their own Senate, but it was ratified by the Philippine Senate. So that's how the onerous relationship between the Philippines and US is. And I think it's about time that the DFA, Department of Foreign Affairs, should do something about it, especially the Senate Oversight Committee on Foreign Affairs. I think it's under Amy Marcos. Kailang i-revisit na yan, i-revise kung kailan, and then abrogate if that's for the national interest of the Philippines.
PBBM foreign policy, no? I would agree with Professor Bobby. No, as much as I want to be more open-minded about this and give the incumbent president and the administration of President BBM the benefit of the doubt, no, and how he actually is navigating the whole terrain. And when you talk about geopolitics and how we relate to different and major powers, not only in the region, but even across the world, I would agree with Professor Bobby, because the signs are there. And EDCA, the expansion of EDCA, and the additional sites. And, you can see it, our foreign policy are more leaning towards the United States than the previous administration. The previous administration, the approach was rapprochement to China, precisely because before Duterte came into power, our relation with China is zero, even diplomatically, because of the Scarborough Shoal standoff. So there's a need for recalibration. That's why there was a rapprochement approach to China by the Duterte administration, which was good, and I agree with it, because we need to have good relation with China. China is our economic partner, the largest one thus far. And it's the largest economic partner as well of ASEAN. And we are part of ASEAN. In that sense, we need to have that good relation with China. Our economic relation with China always depend as well on our political relation with China, if good or bad. So in that sense, the Duterte administration has a really good way of doing it. From a very volatile and very bad relationship with China during Aquino, then rapprochement during the time of Duterte, and now with PBBM, it's a little bit different though. There is this kind of pivot that they're saying to the United States. But of course, on my side, I am still, I have this hope, that we will, in a matter of time, that the president, our president at the moment, will see the implications of the kind of foreign policy that he's adopting. When you talk about the emerging, what you call multipolar world, and the emerging dynamics in Asia and the world as well. And China is a rising superpower also. So I think I want to see, in a matter of time, for the administration, the current one, to strike a balance. And at the end of the day, I really hope that in a matter of time, PBBM will again, strive for the Philippines to have that independent foreign policy. Independent foreign policy for the Philippines, in most cases, how it's being operationalized is striking a balance between China and the United States. And I think that's the best position that we could have, if possible. No. Oh, well, it is possible. It's really in the hands of the president because he's the architect of our foreign policy, the sole architect. And I still am hopeful about that, to be honest with you, even with all the EDCA and all of these things, because there's still time to recalibrate, I think, no? And I really hope that PBBM will see things in a broader sense, in a clear way. This is not for China, this is not for the United States. This is, at the end of the day, for the country to strike a balance. Because if you look at ASEAN countries at the moment, look at Indonesia. They always have this independent foreign policy. They're a friend of the United States, they're also a friend of China. And I think we need to have that kind of position. No? Even of Russia, no? They're a friend of Russia. Yeah, so, we need to be friends to all. Enemy to none. Really, in every sense. That's my take, no? Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sir, Professor Bobby and Professor Ana.
Pakilala sarili niyo.
Yeah. Michael Rogas po from Radyo ng Bayan. Yeah. Sir, Professor, what is your reaction that ngayon po ay meron ng full-fledged DND secretary, okay? In the person of one of the bar top notcher, Secretary Gilbert Chidoro.
Customer din ng Kamuning Bakery.
Sige po. Ano po ngayon ang bentahin natin or advantage natin sa pagtatanggol ng ating teritoryo, ng ating pong karagatan? Ngayong meron na po tayong full-fledged DND Secretary under Marcos administration. And second, mayroon pa bang pwersa tayo ngayon para may pagtanggol ang ating teritoryo sa kabila ng pagiging malapit na naman natin ngayon sa Amerika? Actually, meron pong ginagawa ngayon nga pala na joint exercises. That is not joint. Trilateral exercises between Philippines Coast Guard, U.S. Coast Guard, and Japan Coast Guard. What is the impact of these trilateral exercises na ito on our territorial claim? Professor Bobby and Professor Anne. Thank you.
Gilbert Chidoro was in fact the top notcher, not just one of the top notchers from the UP College of Law. Well, it's too soon to make any judgment on Teodoro, but knowing his government experience, he used to also be the Defense Secretary of GMA, right? So he has experience on that. And being a lawyer, I would say that he would look at defense policy more comprehensively, especially in the context of foreign relations. I think that is one of the reasons why President Marcos appointed him as the new defense secretary to complement the expertise also of Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo. So on that, I think both Manalo and Teodoro will complement each other. And I hope it will lead to a deeper understanding of the futile military alliance with the US, and will lead Bongbong Marcos's so-called independent foreign policy, which some experts actually say now that there's no such thing as independent foreign policy anymore in modern day. That they will be able to, in addition to the role of the Congressional Oversight Committee on Foreign Affairs, chaired by I. Marcos, to review everything. Marcos still has 5 years before his term ends. So on that note, I look at it very positively. Teodoro is more of a laser type rather than the, a military man who would think of military solution before they open their minds. I know that for a fact. So that's my...
What about Professor Ana?
Yes. Same question ito from J.D. De Castro. Pareho sa tanong niya, ano reaction niyo sa new Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro?
Okay. Thank you, Professor Bobby. I would agree with Professor Bobby. No? I'm a bit. It's too early, no, to say that I'm really happy, no. But I think this is a welcome development that the president appointed Mr. Gibo Teodoro as the new DND secretary. Tapos secretary na talaga. Hindi na siya OIC. Kasi ang nangyayari sa atin, OIC ng OIC. Okay? Ngayon, iba kasi kapag OIC ka, hindi yung full-fledged ang power mo to make, run the whole DND and make decision. But pag ngayon, pag sinabi mong secretary na, hindi na OIC, mas magandang pakinggan, no? Oo, kasi may diin, kumbaga. So that is a very good, na welcome development. Ang alam ko, kasi, ang alam ko kay, Mr. Teodoro, during his time na naging, secretary ng DND, he did very well. He had done a good job during his term na former, DND secretary. And if that is the track record of Mr. Teodoro at that time, I think he will, I hope, and I really wish that he will also surpass that kind of good track record when he was a former DND. When you talk about critical issues of geopolitics and international relations, especially when you talk about the South China Sea issue, a dispute, I think he is the right man for that because of his background in law. And not only local or domestic laws, but international laws. I think he will understand more and he will see how we can position ourselves based on this framework, international law framework, and how we can position ourselves properly in relation to China, in relation to the United States, in relation to other superpowers. And when it comes to our defense and military policy, I think it's something that I look forward to because he is now the DND secretary. I really hope so.
Now, regarding your second question, on whether the Philippines has its own independent military power, my my sound answer to that, it has nothing to show anything of having an independent military power, because since 1947, the Philippines has always been dependent on the U.S. On its military bases, on so-called modernization, on so-called special training, on so-called balikatan war exercises, and so on and so forth. The Philippines has not asserted. And the point is, the principle on this kind of issue, if you don't have an independent economic power, you can never have an independent military power. That's a lesson in the world. Magkakaroon ka lang ng kapasidad na magkaroon ng, shall we say, more or less developed military kung meron kang economic capability, resources, etc. Sa ngayon, we have become more and more dependent on China for our economic infrastructure requirements and military in the U.S.
Sir.
So I think everything is in limbo. Nobody says when the Philippines will really become independent because it is attached security-wise to the U.S. and economic-wise to China. Yes.
Professor, this is a follow-up question regarding this. On the ongoing trilateral exercises between Philippines, Japan, and US, actually, sa mga oras na to, ongoing po yung trilateral exercises. Meron tayong makukuha na training, kaalaman pagdating po doon sa kakayahan ng mga military or Coast Guard ng Japan and US, Professor?
Wala po. Walang lesson, walang game na makukuha ang Pilipinas dito. The reason why the US keeps on doing these so-called balikatan war exercises is to use their new weapons. Yung kanilang new weapon systems. And they're using stooge like the Philippines. No? Kunyari, Pilipinas ang kalaban nila. So, gagamitin nila yung kanilang new weaponry against. Meron pa nga po live ammunition exercises. It is obvious that despite these series of exercises since the 1950s, the Philippines has not had any independent military power. It has not become yet a beneficiary of the transfer of military technology from the US or even Japan to the Philippines. So talo tayo dyan. Alam nyo, talagang parating kawawa ang Pilipinas sa mga itong mag-issue. It's about time that we should learn about this and remove ourselves from the elusive dream that our security will be best defended under US.
Just to add to Professor Babino, this is a sad reality. What we're saying is really a sad reality, and I agree with him in every possible point, on every point. When you talk about the military strength or capability of the country, of our country, our beloved country, you know, any country for that matter, if you really study how they strengthen their own military capability, and that is independent and it's not controlled by any other country for that matter, the only way to do that is to strengthen your economic side. When your economic side is very strong, you have money, you have funds, then you can strengthen your capability, militarily speaking, because you have it. You have the funds to do it, because it needs money at the end of the day. And then you can stand on your own 2 feet. So that's why every time I'm being interviewed, I always advocate that the first priority for the Philippines is to be an economic powerhouse in ASEAN. Let's do that. And we need China if we want that too. That is a reality and that is a fact. Now, if you are, have that kind of economic might, not really you're not a huge country, but at least look at Singapore. They're very, wealthy. We can do that too. If we can do that, then we have the money to strengthen our military on our own 2 feet, on our own. And we cannot be dependent on other countries for that. And then we can be independent as well to make decisions when you talk about foreign policy and when you talk about defense and military and security that is not dictated by any power or any foreign control or any foreign country for that matter. That is the way forward. And if you look at China, that's the way they did it. They made their economy strong first before they even strengthen their economic military capability. Ganun ang ginawa ng China. Pinalakas nila yung kanilang ekonomiya. Now, marami na silang pera, so pinapalakas nila ngayon ang military capability nila without asking funds from other countries to do that. And even other countries is the same. So sa atin, we need to strengthen our economy, make it really strong, so that we can stand on our 2 feet when you talk about military capability. We cannot be dependent with the United States forever.
So I think the contentious core issue here is that for a long time, Philippine foreign policy has been reactive, has been responsive, not proactive. Unlike the Japanese, who think forward. They think about 50 years ahead, China 50 years ahead, 100 years ahead. That's how they define their mindset. Ang kahinaan ng ating foreign policy establishment, at pabago-bago yan, actually, dahil sa pabago-bago ang presidente. Unlike China, may yung kanilang ruling mechanism is the Communist Party of China. And they elect their leaders through the People's Congress, Party Congress. We don't have that advantage. Those are that is part of the intrinsic problems defining the Philippine
Professor, last question. The whole world now, the center of the eye of the whole world is on the upcoming U.S. election. Okay? They are looking for who will be the winner next year between Biden and Trump. Okay. Now, ano po yung sa tingin ninyo ay maaaring mabago kung meron man after the election? Who will be the winner between Trump and Biden? Ano yung maaaring mabago sa ating foreign relations sa Amerika at yung magiging kasalukuyang giyera ngayon ng Russia at ng Ukraine?
Wala akong nakikitang pagbabago eh. Siguro may konti, minimal. Nakita mo yung nangyari kay Biden doon sa US Air Force Academy ceremonies na that is one indication. It has triggered a popular sentiment among the American people that Biden has to go. And if that is the case, whether Trump will be convicted or not, but he will run anyway against any right now at the moment, no? Kasi hindi pa natin alam kung ano yung pagbabago ahead of the November 2024 election. Trump will win. It's Donald Trump again, whether we like it or not. That's my objective assessment.
Same prediction. I think between this upcoming US election, no? Ang dami kasing blunder din ni Biden, no, as a president of the US. If you really look and study the US politics, no? So between Biden and Trump, in terms of winnability at this time, the possibility for Trump to win is higher, and it's there. There is, but the question that is important is like this: if Trump wins, ano ang mangyayari sa foreign policy ng United States? That's the most interesting question because that affects the whole world. Would it change from Biden administration to a Trump administration again? Yun ang magandang tanong. Titignan natin.
May follow-up question ako sa sinabi niyo ng dalawa. Sa tanong niya, na interesting. Pag nanalo pa si Trump, will there be withdrawal of all these US cases and too much spending? Because I keep reading before Trump has been complaining that U.S. has been spending too much money on bases everywhere in the world. And at the beginning of his term, he called up Jimmy Carter to complain about competition with China. And Jimmy Carter said, U.S. has been spending too much money in wars and bases, while China has spent money in building roads and trains and factories. What do you think about the possibility of this impact? Will Trump be more isolationist? Will he focus more on his economy and lessen all these like nine EDCA bases and other bases? What do you think?
Trump, during his first term, is known for his transactional politics. It's all about money. So that's transaction. In fact, it was Biden in 2021 who withdrew American forces in Afghanistan. You remember that? Siyang nag-withdraw. Now, Afghanistan is back in the hands of the Taliban government. We cannot say at this point in time what will happen to under a Trump 2 presidency, whether he will withdraw or pull out the US bases in the Philippines. Just because even during his first term, nothing happened on that particular concern. No. And again, as I said, it is the ruling elite in the US, the so-called deep state, the military industrial congressional complex, that decides on things. And Trump must submit himself to them. Otherwise, he might be, something might happen to him, just like what happened to John F. Kennedy in November 1963. Just check your history. When Kennedy went against the CIA, when he did not follow the CIA. And after that, he was assassinated. He was calling for friendly relations with Cuba. Gusto niya makipag-reconcile sa Cuba. Gusto niyang, ayaw niyang magpadala ng combat troops sa Vietnam eh. So ang pinadala niya, mga advisors lang. And then, nung pumalit si Lyndon Johnson as the successor president, siya naman padala ng hundreds and thousands of American armed forces in Vietnam.
There's news, I saw news that US and China joined naval drills in Indonesia despite risks. What do you think about possibility of US and China engagement? This is June 6, John Spot Press.
That's only PR.
PR only.
Yeah. It happens even among enemies. PR
lang ng US to
magkaawit talaga yan.
Yes.
Foreign policy.
There's no difference, fundamental difference between a Democrat and a Republican. Obama, the Democratic president, supported the war against Iraq and against Afghanistan. Clinton launched during the Balkan War several weeks and months of bombardment on Yugoslavia, on the Serbians, and Albanians also. So until now, meron isang pag-aralin rin, meron na sa ngayon minomonitor na with the Democratic presidential aspirant, si Robert Kennedy Jr. Because Robert Kennedy Jr., like his uncle, John Kennedy, is against the CIA, is against the military. He has filed several cases against the corporate elite of America. He is pro-environment. But the way I think of it, no radical candidate in the US has been elected. So that's disappointing. Yes.
Wilson, sandali lang. Yung reaction ko po doon sa joint naval exercise, right?
Yes,
Yung naval exercise ng US at China.
In Indonesia.
In Indonesia.
Naval.
Meron daw. Sa akin kasi, I would agree that half of it would be PR. But ang ano ko lang doon, ang hope ko lang na any engagement between China and the US in a positive way is a positive thing. Kasi kahit papaano ay nai-engage yung dalawa at nag-uusap. Kasi ngayon, masyadong tensyonado eh. So kung walang usap, mahirap yun. That is mahirap kasi yung dalawang superpower hindi nag-uusap. Kasi ang mangyayari niyan, hindi open yung communication. Hindi na Cold War, yung hindi mo alam kung ano ginagawa ng isa at baka may miscalculation na mangyayari, it would lead really to a world war. So mas maganda na kahit sila hindi talaga yan magkaibigan ng sobra at best of friends, pero at least may engagement. Kahit na maging PR pa yan o hindi. Sa akin, gano'n ang tingin ko. On the other hand, ang Democrats at saka Republican, I agree with everybody. Walang fundamental difference yan. And when you talk about the China issue vis-a-vis the United States, parehas yan. Yes, parehas yan at the end of the day. Yeah. Sir Bobby.
On the war exercise between China and the US, I'm sure it was the plan of Indonesia. It was Indonesian plan.
Oh, very good. Ay, may tanong sa...
Yes, sir.
Good morning po. I'm John from Inquirer Radio Online.
Yes.
Balikan ko lang, was it yung bad move po ba na in-elevate ng Noynoy government yung dispute with China? Heeding the advice of US, sabi nga ninyo, was it a bad move po na meron tayong negotiation with China, then in-elevate natin sa tribunal yung dispute ko. And just nyo rin po na seemingly tuwing may recent bullying, harassment incidents sa South China Sea o West Philippine Sea, mas marami na pong bansa ang nagsaside sa Pilipinas. No, hindi lang po yung Big Brother natin, so-called Big Brother US. Then use nyo rin po doon sa parang magkakaroon tayo ng DFA o MDP like with Japan. And considering po na may issue din on territory ng Japan with China.
In fact, meron din tayong DFA with Australia. Now, maybe this may help. Let me refresh your memory about China. Since the independence of China in 1941, China has had something like territorial disputes with neighboring countries. And out of these 24 territorial disputes, 17 have been settled. Through what? Peaceful negotiation. Peaceful negotiation. The end goal of China, in fact, China has even tended backward, giving up as much as 60% of its claim, territorial claim. Siya ang umatras eh. In exchange for what? In exchange for a non-aggression treaty. For a non-aggression, for a peace treaty. And it has given all countries involved constructive results. Tuloy ang kanilang pag-develop, etc. So on that note, I believe that China was ready to move to bend backward on the maritime disputes with the Philippines. But, and this is my theory, the U.S. did not want that to happen. For the Philippines and the to become friendly with China. with China giving up as much as handa ng China. Kaya nga na-shock siya. Without being informed in advance why, of all things, the Noyne government would undercut and undermine the progressive bilateral dialogue where China was ready to give up concessions by elevating the issue upon the instigation of the US to the arbitral tribunal in The Hague, Netherlands. Sir, sayang.
Yan din ang sabi ni
We missed that opportunity.
Santa Romana
We
sa
missed that
akin.
opportunity.
Sabi ni Chito Santa Romana sa akin na lahat ng mga border issue ng China daw with all the neighbors, pati Russia, pati Vladivostok, give up niya. With Vietnam, nag-give up din siya ng land, pero hindi through broadcasting and arguments daw. Puro dialogue daw. Kasi practical daw ang China. Gusto nila peace with all the neighbors. Ayaw nila kirahin sila. Sabi ni Chito Santa Romana, track record nila, since 1949, tama kayo, Professor, na sabi ni Ambassador Chito Santa Romana, 17 out of 24 territorial disputes na isettled puro sacrifice ang China without broadcasting ito na masa ng China daw para hindi magalit yung mga pasa.
So dapat ba nating sisihin si Hartilesa, si Justice Carpio,
Napagamit
saka
napagamit tayo
si Ambassador Albert Del Rosario.
That's not my point. Ang dapat sisihin dito yung US.
Okay, sila nasa likod.
They were instigating.
Okay, one last point pa, Professor, I would like to, gusto ko samantala itong pagkakataon ito pa to get your point of view. What do you think? Is the US is still applying the Monroe Doctrine and the George Bush Doctrine na if you are not with us, you are against us?
Yes, definitely yes.
I would also say yes. Very evident, no? Very evident. Now, ang kanila kasing target, kasi ang kanilang competitor talaga is not Russia. It's China. China ang competitor ng US in every possible way. So, ang target ng US is not Russia. It's China.
Sabihin, talagang gusto ng Amerika na magkagera para isubo ang China para sirain ang ekonomiya niya.
There is, the US may hang up kasi ang United States of trying to preserve its what we call hegemony in the world. Okay? At saka pagiging number one. Kasi the possibility for it to be number two in different areas, like in economic, kung hindi na siya number one, baka number two na siya. So hindi nila matanggap yan eh. They have this hard time of accepting that eh. So, but the possibility of that is happening. So sino ang nagiging number one or nagiging number? That's China. So, siyempre, kapag ang objective mo is to be the hegemon of the world, you will not allow another power to be your competitor that is even at par with you. So, paano mo sila i-cripple? Kasi hindi naman nila kayang i-cripple ng fair game eh. Fair game-wise, they cannot cripple China. How would you do that? There's only one way, to wage a war. To wage a war at the time that China is not yet, it doesn't have yet parity with the United States in terms of military capability. And that is now. Kasi when it comes to 10 years from now or 20 years from now, I would predict, looking at the situation, that China may
Military power.
achieve parity in terms of military strength with the United States.
But if I think that goes deeper to the fact that this universal inherent value in America, I'm not saying the American people, but in America, that they are the champions. That whether, quote unquote, democracy, if democracy works in America, quote unquote, it should work to the world, including China. So they want they have this illusory goal that China will eventually become democratic. They are democratic in their own way. They call it the people's democracy, the whole process people's democracy. So different from the US, but as I said, that's a one semester course. If you want me to elaborate on that.
may additional kasi natin yung dalawa. So, US is eager to have a war, pero not directly using another country na naman. Proxy. Ginagamit ibang bansa, girahin yung kalaban niya na hindi siya matamaan mismo in their own area. Yes, they might use Taiwan or again, like the way they use Ukraine, no? Sorry, sinasabihin ng tao na we don't have time for any questions.
And by the way, the US has not won any single war.
Yes, not any. Even in Afghanistan.
Yes. I remember, there's only one, I remember, napakaliit na bansa, yung Panama.
Ginera nila Panama.
Oo.
Pinidnap yung presidente ba?
Kaya niya.
Nakuha din ng Hong Kong eventually tycoon. So, we have time for maybe one last question. Anyone wants to ask? Anyone just in case? If not, may tanong, people want to have as your closing statement, any advice to President Bongbong Marcos as architect of foreign policy and to the public about how to view Philippines, China, and the world, what's happening now. Na kasi, di ba, ang narrative sa media natin is China is bully, US ang knight in shining armor dumating dito, libreng bodyguard, libreng security guard daw sila. The claim of the US, they are here for free at their own expense to be security of the Philippines. What should be the ideal outlook of the Philippines, and what should the Philippine President Bongbong Marcos do to advance Philippine national and economic interests? Both of you, closing statement.
The fact of the matter that according to latest surveys, 80% of Filipinos are pro-US and 80% are against China. That is unfortunate, and that is coming from what I describe as ill-advised, ill-informed survey response. If you have a respondent that who is not attuned or well enlightened enough to an issue, that is a very tricky survey question. Kasi walang pinanggagalingan eh, kundi conjecture lang o base doon sa mga naririnig ng mga respondents. So that is a very unfortunate thing, and I hope this particular forum will start some kind of an educational, informative drive.
You have to come back again, both of you. You have to come back again.
To take a deeper understanding, not only in China, but also on Russia. Karamihan kasi hindi natin naintindihan. Ang naintindihan natin, right or wrong, is always the US. Magaling ang US sa propaganda. Magaling ang US sa soft power. Hindi natin inaalam na ginagamit lang tayo ng mga Amerikano sa kanyang proxy wars.
Thank you very much, Professor Bobby Tuason. Next, Professor Ana Malindog Uli.
Okay, thank you so much, Wilson, for inviting me here in Pandesal Forum. Thank you so much, our media friends and our friends here, and even in Zoom, no, and those watching in social media for attending and listening to us. And Professor Bobby, thank you so much. The same with Professor Bobby, no, I think the public, the Filipino public, when you talk about geopolitics and when you talk about positioning our country in relation to the world and in relation to China and the United States and Russia even, or other major power in the region, we, as much as possible, and at the end of the day, what is important for us as a country is our national interests. That is the bottom line, okay? Because if you want to survive as a country, your national interest is the primordial consideration, nothing else, okay? Not the interest of the United States, for that matter, because the United States is right now in our ground. EDCA is here, the additional foresights that EDCA would requires prepositioning of military assets of the United States and deployment of troops because you have DFA. Is that part of our national interest? Is that something that coincide with our with our constitution at the moment? Of course not. So at the end of the day, my advocacy always is uphold the national interest of the country and what's the best for the country. That the country should not be dragged in any conflict that is not our interest and we don't have anything to do with. So that's, I think, the most important. And I just really hope, I really hope that PBBM, as the sole architect of our foreign policy, will see these things clearly and will re-navigate its foreign policy to be more striking a balance between the two superpowers, no? Especially with the superpower in Asia, that is China, no? And to take care of our relationship as much as possible in a way that we're friendly to all and we don't create enemies as much as possible. That will be good for our country. And I really have still no optimism with this current administration. I'm not negative about this current administration. I know that there are a lot of people in the administration that are very smart and intelligent, and they see these things. And I think people like us and Professor Bobby, it's our kind of it's kind of our duty, not really an obligation, but some kind of a duty as nationals and citizens of this country to voice out our perspective, what we think. Probably the administration will take a look and will listen a little bit to us, no? And that is my advocacy as well as a person, no? And someone who understands a bit about geopolitics and international relations, and politics for that matter, since it's my background. So that is my last talk, and yeah, and I really hope our country will not be in a compromising situation, whatever happens, no? And of course, at the end of the day, economic development is the best thing that we can have for our country, not geopolitics really, not playing with geopolitics. It's costly for us. Economic development should be our priority. Thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindugoy and Professor Bobby Tuason. Before we end and have our picture taking, we want to give a birthday cake to June Lalin, editor, showbiz editor and columnist. We invited
Ayun, so yun mga kaibigan, napakinggan nyo, napanood nyo, yung ginawa pong Pandesal Forum dyan po, no, sa QC. Na sa totoo lang, ano ba pakialam ng Pilipinas dyan po sa bangayan ng Ukraine, no, or ng sa China na yan, kung sa anong mamang bansa yan. Tama yung sinasabi ni Professor Uy na dapat tayo, gumawa tayo ng sarili nating diskarte no, kung paano natin pagyayamanin ng bansa natin, ang Pilipinas. Di yung, wala tayong pakialam sa kanila eh. Nga lang, siyempre, may mga instances po na halimbawa tayo, dumiin tayo sa bansang China. So, pag dumiin tayo doon at kaaway nila ay US, sigurado, kaaway na rin ng Pilipinas. Siyempre, paano mangyayari dyan? Di siyempre, kung magkakatuluyan yan ng magbakbakan, di kasama na rin tayo. Makikibakbak na rin tayo at babakbakan na rin tayo sigurado. Mahirap pong ano. Wala iniwan mo yan sa isang magkaibigan. Tropa kayo, 5. Ngayon yung 2 nakaaway ng 3. So, yun na ho yun. Di ba? Mahirap yung gano'n. Kaya dapat sana yung ating mga leader, no, dito sa Pilipinas, sa ating sa bansa, dapat nakapokus sila kung paano ang gagawin nila, paano pagyamanin ang ating bansa. Hindi yung makikialyado ka sa gantong bansa, etc. Di ba? Bakit? Sa bagay, minsan totoo na kailangan nating na makialyado sa ibang bansa, lalo na kung malakas na bansa, etc. Dahil kailangan ho natin yun. Sa totoo lang yun. Pero sana, wag naman sobra. Iisipin pa rin natin ang kapakanan ng bawat Pilipino, kung maganda ba. Alam nyo, yung sa mga pelikula, katulad ng pelikulang Emilio Aguinaldo, no? Meron ho dong, kung mapanood nyo yun, na pinatay siya, no? Bakit? Paano may mga nakialam na taga-ibang bansa ng mga banyaga? Okay mga kaibigan, oras natin na 7:05 po ng gabi Philippine Standard Time. At pasamantala po ay magpapaalam muna tayo at sana yan maging maganda ang natin ngayong ang Pangulo na si President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Maging maganda na ang takbo, no, ng Pilipinas at maging maganda na ang buhay ng bawat Pilipino. So okay po mga kaibigan, muna ako naging kasama, kaututan dila, kajaming, kakosa, kabarangay, katropa. Dito po sa programang Talakayin, Revisahin, Opinion, Palawakin, Aksyonan, Tropa. No? At bago tayo patuloy ang magtapos po, abay magandang gabi. Ha? Yun, si Albert Tolentino, yung katropa nating traffic enforcer ng Malabon City, no? Si Tule, yung kung tawagin si Tule. Si Albert Tolentino, ayan, nanonood sa atin. Albert, good evening sa iyo. Hindi na kita nakikita. At yun, si Giancarlo Rehenes, ayun, nag-thank you kay mama niya. Thank you daw. Thank you, Jose Merly, sabi ng yung Junakis. At si Bro Enteng Diaz, ng Barangay Tagalag. Bro Enteng, kung sakaling nandiyan ka, pasyalan kita after ng program. At si Mama Marini Lagura, at si Christopher De Los Santos, yung ating si Kapitan Mapalad, ng Masbate, tama ba? Hindi, Masbate ba? Ayun. At si Ma'am Merly, ayun, si Miss Jackie Adahar, ayan, ng Bulacan. At siyempre si Paring Bayan Jogrades ng, hindi ko malaman kung Bulacan ba o Dagupan. Hindi o, sa Bulacan siya nakauwi, pero nakadistino ho siya ay parting Region 1. Okay, muli magandang gabi po sa inyo. Tapos naging kasama, ROCEL Lopez, magandang gabi Pilipinas at mapayapang magdamag. Magandang gabi po. Barangay, pangunahing unit ng pamahalang lokal kung saan dito pinag-uusapan ang bawat sigalot ng mga residente ng bawat barangay. Dito rin pinag-uusapan ng mga piling halal na opisyal na barangay ang mga proyekto para sa kanilang barangay. Kumustahin natin ang panunungkulan ni Kapitan dito sa Dalo Barangay sa Millennial Online TV worldwide, ang katropa ng bawat barangay.
Ating tinatapos ang ating pagpupulong. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo at tapos na po ang ating session. Ito na po tayo.
Ngayon, just to continue, Mr. Clyde Teves, the person named in the search warrant, was not around during the implementation of the search.
Talakayin. Revisahin. Opinion. Palawakin. Aksyonan. Kasama si ROCEL dito na sa iyong Millennial Online TV.
Ikaw ba'y nag-iisa? Nalulungkot? Dahil iniwan at ipinagpalit? Niloko? Naging minamahal? Kung ngayon, i-type sa iyong mga cellphone, Facebook o YouTube man ang Millennial Online TV. Dahil nasa Millennial Online TV na ang online realista ng bagong milenyo, si Randall Villanos.
Sana'y di magmaliw kung dati kung araw nang di pang bata sa piling ni nanay. Nais kong mauli ang awit ninang mahal. You are the one who makes me happy when everything else turns to gray. Walk on through the rain.
At haharanahin kayo ni Randall ng iba't ibang awitin para maibsan ang inyong inip at kalungkutan kahit nasaan man kayo.
Hanggang sa tumanda. Come on. Matanda na, sana'y di tayo magbago.
At pwede rin kayo makiduet kay Randall tuwing Huwebes ng hapon. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga kamilenyo? Tawag na!
Araw-araw ikaw ang gusto kong
Nagbabasa ka pa ba ng dyaryo? O nakikinig ka pa ba ng radyo? Kung ngayon, lahat yan ay mapapakinggan nyo na sa inyong mga cellphone. Dahil online na tayo, mga kamilenyo. Kaya manood, makinig dito sa Millennial Online TV.
Rider, sumalpok sa
Kaya
poste ng
i-follow, like, subscribe, at i-share na mga katropa. Mga milenyo, pagod ka na ba galing sa trabaho? At gutom na sa maghabong pagtatrabaho? Pero wala kang pagkain sa bahay? Narito na ang sagot mga katropa, ang super manok lechon. Napapawi sa inyong gutom at siguradong mapapa-analyze ka dahil sa tender juicy na jam mo pa at siguradong malinis at bagong katay buhat sa farm. Kaya super masalasa at pangmasa pa. Ano pa hinihintay nyo mga katropa? Takbo na sa Super Manok Panteño Siniluan at bumili na. Baka maabusan ka, katropa. Pinaigting, pinalakas ang bagong news online TV ng bagong milenyo. Millennial Online TV, ang katropa mo sa pagbabalita.
Hi, this is Hilary Gadon. Nananawagan ako sa ating mga katropa, no? At mga kaibigan, mga kababayan, na palaging tumutok sa Millennial Online TV. At yan ay pinangunahan at yan ay pinangangasiwaan ng aking kaibigan na si ROCEL. At ang mga nanunood dyan ay hindi bobo!
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiging sa sinahanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Upang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiging, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatak tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng pagaw, ay hinatang tulakaw.
Sa lahat ng bumubuo ng Millennial Online TV at sa lahat po ng sumusuporta, maraming salamat po. Millennial Online TV is now signing off.